During our first semester at Hamline University, we were given the opportunity to take a fascinating class entitled Good Food, Eating, and Culture. In this class, we explored food culture across the globe and the different food systems that are present. We read 4 books, all of which were extremely interesting. The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan was the first book we read. This book explored the ways Americans consume their food with a focus on the issues with our food system. The second was Just Food by James E. McWilliams, which challenged readers to eat their food responsibly and think about how their food affects the world. We then read Fresh by Suzanne Friedberg, which exposed the true costs of our fresh foods and the histories behind them. The last book of the class was a reader called The Cultural Politics of Food and Eating, edited by James L. Watson and Melissa Caldwell. This compilation of academic essays focused on the globalization of food, market economies, and the ways that different cultures consume and perceive food. For our final project, our group, Sustainable Future, decided to produce a video that helped further explain the issue of sustainability in our current food system. We started by asking Hamline students to give us their definition of what they thought a sustainable food source would be.
Alright, Peter, what do you think sustainable food is?
Food that you can keep producing without any risk of it running out in at least the near future.
Good afternoon, Troy.
Good
How are you
afternoon.
doing today?
Pretty good.
That's great. We're gonna have you try a couple of pieces of pizza and 2 different types of bananas here in a minute. But first, I'd like to ask you, what do you think sustainable food is?
What do you mean?
Like, what is your definition of a sustainable food system?
Sustainable food? Anything that can grow. Sustainable food source. Something that'll be there like year after year. And it's not going to go away. Like based on the climate or something.
Right on. Excellent. What do you think is sustainable food source?
Something that keeps you full and is good for you. Sustainable food production. I couldn't tell you.
Sustainable food source means that I should know because I sustainable means that you can keep going for a long time without running it into the ground. And without ruining the ecosystem and killing a lot of people via starvation.
As illustrated by the student responses, sustainability is a huge buzzword. The definition is often fuzzy or unknown to many people in the general public. We decided to next ask what professors at our college considered a sustainable food source to be.
Our group decided to interview 2 professors at Hamline, Professor Ferris and Professor Ombre, because their professions are closely related to the environment and agriculture, which would help give us further educated perspectives on the issue of sustainable food.
How do you define a sustainable food production system?
You know, it's actually not an easy question because there's several different definitions. One might be one in which we put sort of less carbon into food production than we get out. Another might be one in which we don't create lots of pollution or toxic waste. And other people might say that it might depend upon the scale of production. So a small scale might be more sustainable than large scale. So there's a number of different ways you can think about sustainability.
Alright, so what in your opinion is a sustainable food source?
A sustainable food source. Well, I guess, it goes to the definition of sustainability, which would mean it'd be something that you can produce to support current populations without sort of mortgaging the future. So, it seems like you could come at this in different ways, but a way in which the energy that it takes to raise the crops, if it's, if that's the kind of food we're talking about, wouldn't be beyond sort of what you're getting out of it. So, let me give a good example. But depending on the farming, the way in which the farming is occurring, there might be lots of machinery, fossil fuel use, and just planting the crop and harvesting the crop, which could end up being very energy intensive. In addition, there could be lots of application of fertilizer and things like that, which may, in the short run, provide a lot of productivity on the land, but in the longer run, might not necessarily detract from the land's fertility, but could have impacts on soil isn't conserved too, that would have longer range problems if there's lots of erosion from the land. So I guess sustainable ways to grow food would keep those things in mind, not just trying to produce as much as you can in the here and now, but think about 20, 40, 100 years down the road or even more.
So, as a general consensus, most people define a sustainable food system as a system that can feed the masses while still protecting the environment and not utilizing more resources than it can provide. In our readings, we learned that our food system is for the most part unsustainable. An example includes corn and soy as commodities that Pollan pointed out in The Omnivore's Dilemma. Currently, corn can be found in most processed foods and is largely overproduced. In the chapter entitled The Elevator, Pollan says that moving the mountain of cheap corn has become the principal task of the industrial food system since the supply of corn vastly exceeds the demand. It is not sustainable to create a surplus of certain foods. We should only produce what we need, but the industry is always focused on profit, which can often lead to overproduction. These types of overproduction lead to monocultures, which exhaust the land that they reside on. Another big problem is the overconsumption of meat that McWilliams pointed out in Just Food in the chapter entitled Meat, the New Caviar. He made the argument that if the world continues to eat meat at current rates, there's simply no way to achieve truly sustainable food production. He backs up his claim with evidence, including the fact that land animals are extremely inefficient and waste energy. For example, cows require anywhere from 3 to 33 calories of fossil fuel for every 1 calorie of meat. They also pollute the air through methane and carbon dioxide emission. 18% of greenhouse gas emissions come from raising livestock. Livestock also exhausts the land that they are raised on, and a section from the chapter claims that if the world's growing population decided to eat the same amount of meat that the world's affluent now consume, we would need 67% more land than the Earth has. America also has a huge problem with overconsumption in general. McWilliams told his readers the following alarming statistic. A typical household wastes 1.28 pounds of food a day. This amounts to 14% of overall food purchases being tossed in the trash. This is extremely wasteful, and if we hope to retain a sustainable food system, we need to start buying only the food that we can eat. When it comes to produce production, the pesticides used in both organic and industrial farming are detrimental to the environment. An answer to this problem, as McWilliams suggested in Just Food, could be genetically modified foods. If we began to use them to prevent the overusage of chemicals on the soil, they could help our planet immensely. Where our food comes from is also a huge issue when it comes to thinking about sustainability. Food miles are often cited and are important when considering what to eat if you want to become environmentally friendly. According to Pollan, it takes between 7 to 10 calories of fossil fuel energy to deliver 1 calorie of food to the American plate. However, McWilliams argues back that while it makes sense to buy an apple if it is in season in your hometown, buying an apple just because it is local doesn't always make sense. Say the local apple was produced in an inefficient greenhouse. It would then make more sense to buy the imported apple. Overall, America's biggest issues with creating sustainability are the monocultures in most agricultural practices, the wastes of food, inefficiency, pollution, and food as a commodity. We asked Professor Ferris what the current issues with our food system were, and here is his response.
What are some of the current issues with our industrial food system?
I think the issues are sort of ones that I just mentioned. One of the issues, of course, is just how much energy we're putting into production of food and how much we're actually getting out in terms of the energy in, of course, is mostly petroleum and resources needed to produce the giant machinery needed for industrial production. It also has to do with the resources that are going into the genetic aspects of industrial production, which of course is where the big money is these days, the vertical integration of pesticides with particular genes and so on, the Roundup Ready crops. I think there is another issue that people often confuse, and that's the relationship between what is organic and what is sustainable. A lot of folks think that just because something is organic that it is somehow sustainable, and there's absolutely nothing true about that these days. If you go to the grocery store, most of your organic food that you're getting is produced in an industrial system. And so I think that's an area that, especially those who are interested in that issue, oftentimes don't separate, excuse me, separate those.
In response to Professor Ferris's comment about how people confuse sustainability and organic foods, we performed a taste test to see if people could tell the difference between an industrial pizza and an organic one. We did the same with bananas. After each taste test, we asked the taster which one they thought was which, and which food system they considered to be more sustainable. The two types of pizza we got were Z Pizza, an organic company based in California, and Pizza Hut. Here are the results of the pizza taste test.
And reaction?
It's good. It's a little undercooked.
Excellent. Now if you'd like to take a bite.
What about that one?
I like that one better. This one tastes a little chewier, like not as like savory, but not as good a texture in my opinion.
Which one do you think is the organic one?
Is this the organic one?
Yeah. Good job.
Well, the first one tasted watery, and the second one tasted good.
Okay, and which one do you think is organic?
Probably the first one.
Okay. So how did both of those pieces of pizza taste to you?
They're both fine.
Was there any difference?
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what, but that one, they tasted different on that one.
Okay.
First or the second one better?
I thought the lighter one was better.
Which one do you think was industrial?
I'm going to assume this one because it was greasier, but I could be wrong.
This one?
No, this one.
That one? That
You're
one was
wrong.
actually the organic.
You're wrong.
Alright.
Okay. How did both the pizzas taste for you?
This one tastes doughy, that one was delicious, yes.
Okay, and which one do you think is the organic one?
That one, we could take that.
How did you think both of them tasted? They both tasted fine. This one was a little more filling with each bite, but it's really the only difference I noticed. And which one do you think is the organic one? This one. Okay.
The one that was the bigger slice has like more of a tomato sauce flavor. So yeah, and there's a better crust on the bigger sliced one.
Which one do you think is organic?
If I were to guess which one is organic, I don't know. Actually, they both tasted pretty not organic to me. I'm gonna guess the one with the better crust, the bigger one.
As illustrated by our video interviews, there were different ideas as to which was which. It was hard for people to distinguish between the organic pizza and the industrial one. We were curious to find if the same was true for bananas. We bought both regular Chiquita bananas and organic ones, and here are our results.
The second one's kind of grainy and slimy. The first one was better. It had a better texture, taste.
Which one do you think was the organic one?
The first one.
Okay.
So, which did you think was organic?
I'm gonna get this one wrong too, but I think those ones were.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh. What did you think was organic?
Probably the first one.
You were correct.
You're correct.
What kind of differences did you notice?
The first one kind of tasted better.
Which banana did you prefer?
I like those better. They
Okay.
were sweeter.
And which would you assume is the organic banana?